Hello, everybody that's watching today's episode of Mountain Readers. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, but I want to first of all introduce the people that we're going to be talking with. And here we got Angel Pantojas, and we got Kariam Rodriguez, also Leilani Moore, and Gabriel Cortez. So first of all, before we start talking, I want to, have a little exercise with the people watching this video, this podcast. Please, look around, look at us, sitting here, look at the trees, look at the water, the leaf, the nature around us. Now, all of you guys, what does this remind you of?
What? Trees.
Trees? Okay, yeah. Try again.
Nature.
You're almost there. No, obviously, Siddhartha, because the river Siddhartha. Siddhartha, the book.
Arif. I'm sure not a lot of people know what Siddhartha is about. So, Leilani, can you explain?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so basically, Siddhartha is a novel written by Herman Hesse where he talks about a young man named Siddhartha, whose whole journey is in trying to reach nirvana, which means enlightenment. We see Siddhartha's whole life from childhood to adulthood as he navigates self-decisions.
But you forgot to mention that initially he was a Brahmin son. Then he became a Samana alongside his childhood friend Govinda. Then he discovered the material life thanks to Kamala and Kawaswami. And finally he reached enlightenment through the river with the ferryman.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So basically, Siddhartha gains power throughout his journey and the relationships he built with the people until he reached enlightenment through the teachings of the river.
Okay, so now that you mentioned that, power, that is a strong word. So did Siddhartha really gain power? And if so, how did this affect the relationships he made on his journey?
Okay, so to start the discussion, I want to know how you guys define power in this novel. Because I personally see power in Siddhartha as the evidence of his growth and change throughout the story. I believe there are two types of power presented in the novel. There's power over people and also power over yourself. In many instances in Siddhartha, it is shown how power over the individuals, such as his father, the Samanas, and Govinda, and you may also say that other characters like Siddhartha's son held some kind of power over him.
Although I agree with what you just mentioned, I think it is essential to define power. And according to Merriam-Webster, power is defined as possession of control, authority, or influence over others. Meaning that to correctly define power in this novel, we have to identify how characters display these qualities and skills. For example, Siddhartha is a figure of influence over those that surround him. This can be seen in the first few chapters. You can see that he holds control and authority over Govinda's thoughts and actions, even going as far as surpassing the oldest Samana and casting a spell on him.
I completely agree with what Kariam is talking about, but I want to dive in more specifically about what Gabriel said, because I think it's more evident power over people. Because we can see in the novel that in every relationship Siddhartha is in, whether it's with his father, Govinda, Kawaswami, Siddhartha holds most of the power. In my opinion, Siddhartha's always had power, beginning with his father and then moving on with Govinda. Govinda was like Siddhartha's little puppy that was willing to do anything for him and follow him everywhere. When Siddhartha wanted to leave for the first time, Govinda quickly followed, even though he was going to have to leave his home and probably never come back. And when they moved for a second time, Govinda always wanted Siddhartha's approval in everything that he did. Because when Govinda wanted to follow and preach Gautama, the first thing that he did was ask Siddhartha how he felt about him. In this relationship, Siddhartha had all the power and left Govinda powerless, which is something we see a lot in Siddhartha's relationships. Overall, it's just very interesting to see Siddhartha, how he gains even more power throughout his journey.
Okay, Arif?
Whoa. I feel like we're seeing too many power dynamics, too many power things going on here. Like, okay, can we please explain how did Siddhartha exactly gain power in the story, in his journey?
Well, I believe that every step of the journey makes Siddhartha more powerful, actually. Spiritually, and also the way he acted. He felt superior. I'm sure you all know that. When he met Gautama, Siddhartha mentions, I have the book right here, I have never seen a man look and smile, sit and walk like that. I also would like to look and smile, sit and walk like that. So free. Siddhartha gained power with every person he met, and also a more detailed purpose to his journey. He got inspired by everybody, but as he mentions, I will also conquer myself. Eventually, he achieved his goal, putting him in a powerful position.
Yeah, also another example right at the beginning of the novel is when Siddhartha proved his power over his dad. By choosing to leave to go with the Samanas, he needed to challenge his father's approval in order to prove his worth and show he was ready. An example of this is when his dad went to check the room for the second time, and I quote, "And he came silently again, hour after hour, looked into the room, and saw him standing unmoving, his heart filled with anger, with anxiety, with fear and sorrow." This clearly shows how Siddhartha had power over his father's emotions and feelings.
I think that it is very important what you just mentioned, but I think it is also essential and kind of, in my opinion, the most important part of his journey with power is his experience with mundane pleasures through Kamala. This gave him a deeper perspective and understanding of those that he thought that were less than him and of that high horse he was in from spirituality. I think it's even fair to say that experiences with mundane people and with normal people got him down from that high horse he was in and made him realize that he was also human and susceptible to the world around him. And it is because of this experience that he found himself a path opened to dive into the river's wisdom through the teachings of the ferryman.
Okay, so now that we all shared points on power in his journey, how do we agree that Siddhartha gained power throughout the story or not?
Well, I honestly believe, like, you guys have mentioned a lot of valid points. And, there's a key point to, analyzing the story. There's many amounts of powers and different versions to achieve it. And I believe that clearly Siddhartha, gained power throughout this entire story. I feel like there might have been different moments where he gained different, types of power. Because, for example, when he was with the Samanas and he, mentally controlled the leaders of the Samana, you could agree that maybe that is clearly an example of power, and maybe the most socially acceptable one, because it's like, oh, I can make somebody submit or something like that. But I personally believe the biggest achievement of power, Siddhartha ever made in the book was gaining power over himself. Because, you can control all the people you want, you can do whatever you want. But, his main goal since the beginning of the book was, controlling himself and reaching nirvana. So I feel like, obviously, it is a certain amount of power. It is a type of power, having complete control over yourself and the world around you. So I feel that is the biggest achievement of power Siddhartha accomplished in this book, in this novel.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Arif said, that power over himself is one of the most power dynamics shown in the book, especially that we see that he reached that ultimate power by reaching nirvana. But I think it's very important to highlight that Siddhartha had always had this sort of drive and power since the beginning, since he was very young. And we see this with his father when, he basically had the power even though he was a child. This makes me think about how did power affect the relationship with his father. So Siddhartha had always wanted more power. Yes, his end goal was to reach enlightenment, but he always wanted the power of knowledge to be able to reach nirvana. And that's why he left his father. Siddhartha let power overcoming and affect the relationship with his father.
You're right. Power is really important in the relationship with his father. So I believe we need to, since not many people know about Siddhartha, we need to relate it to another thing. And I believe Kung Fu Panda is a great example of how powerful he is. Yep. So I believe Siddhartha is a coward, honestly. He was afraid to go back to his father, and the power he thought he possessed took away all his humility. As Siddhartha mentions in the book I have right here, when shall I do at home with my father? Study, offer sacrifices, practice meditation. All this is over for me now, Siddhartha said. In contrast, Po, the protagonist of the movie, became the dragon warrior, but he had no shame going back to his father, a simple restaurant owner. Siddhartha also mentions going back to his father is like walking backwards. Arif?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly believe, I'm so grateful you mentioned Paul, because I feel like Paul, he's a real one. He's a real one in every aspect you can think about it. Paul, since the beginning of the book, the movie, he was, we could see his character and it was kind of sad. He was like, whoa, he's just a panda. Like, what is he doing with his life? And then we can see he becomes a dragon warrior, and throughout that entire timing of power upon power, because being named the dragon warrior is like a huge thing. I don't know if y'all remember the scene of the Skadoosh. He destroyed the entire village with a pinky. Now that's power right there. And I'm thinking, after all of that, he went back to his family. Oh my God. He really is the greatest of all time. And I feel like Siddhartha, on the other hand, I don't want to hate on Siddhartha because, he's my man too, but he didn't go back to his family. He kind of tried to make his own life on his own. And I believe it is kind of selfish because even at the beginning of the book, that drive of, I want to achieve enlightenment. I want to discover all, as Leilani mentioned, that search for power, that thirst for knowledge, it's kind of selfish in comparison to Paul, which, as I said, greatest of all time.
Kariam?
Well, I think it is very important what you all have mentioned, but I think that another relationship that was very affected with Siddhartha's thirst for power was his relationship with Govinda. And as Leilani mentioned in the first question, the readers can witness Govinda's puppy-like devotion towards Siddhartha in the first few chapters of the book. It is evident that Govinda has a profound respect for Siddhartha's level of spirituality, but because of his obsession with finding nirvana and finding what was right and perfect, he found himself losing that connection and friendship he had with Govinda further on, separating what had once been a close relationship and leaving Siddhartha all alone. Ultimately, power was the catalyst of the ruined relationship.
Okay, Kariam, even though I agree with what you just mentioned, we need to remember that Govinda reunited with Siddhartha at the end of the book, the novel. So we need to talk about the relationship between Poe and Tigress, too, and how it relates to Siddhartha and Govinda. Tigress said at the end of the third movie of Kung Fu Panda that Poe taught her how to be a good friend, and Poe became a respected individual in society. Just like Siddhartha became a respected old man in the river. And also, Govinda came back to him and showed Govinda and basically showed that he's the real friend he ever had, and both movies clearly represent love. Arif?
Wow, great comparison for real. Like, I think Tigress, one of the greatest characters of that entire movie as well. In the Paul Tigress dynamic, amazing. But I feel like we got to talk about a certain character that we're missing in this entire book, and it's Kamaswami. Like, let's be honest, we've been ignoring Kamaswami in this entire novel, and he's he was really pivotal for the entire transcurrence of the novel because. Because he kind of represented a boss figure for Siddhartha, but at the same time, as his boss figure, he kind of took him down a really dark path, and that also makes me remember, the movie Elvis Presley, the Colin and Tom Parker. We've all seen that movie. Like, come on, you know what I mean, right?
No,
I mean, I saw that it was in theaters, but like I never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you have not seen? Okay, you know what? Let me just run this up real quickly. Basically, Elvis Presley, we've all heard about him, music, great. And, he had a manager, like many musicians or singers, they all have a manager. And his manager in this case was Colonel Tom Parker. And, to cut it short, basically, Elvis started really small, in small venues, started singing. And, bro, you have to understand the entire, complexity of the story so you can understand how it relates to Siddhartha. So, basically, Colonel Tom Parker saw Elvis Presley since his, meekly beginnings, and he saw some talent. And he immediately was like, whoa, what's good, Elvis? I want to talk to you. I want to do something with you. And, Elvis, of course, surprised with this idea. He obviously accepted. Just like Kamaswami, when Siddhartha first, was introduced to Kamaswami, it was more like an opening to that world. It was like Kamaswami could show them the ropes, and it was all great. It didn't seem like any type of problem, just like Colonel Parker with Elvis. But, as the story, goes on, we can see that everything starts taking some dark turns. For example, Kamaswami, after a while of, showing him that life of, being a merchant and all of that, Siddhartha sadly starts going through some dark paths, just like happens to Elvis, because Colonel Tom Parker starts showing Elvis this dark life of work. I need more money, more greed. And that eventually leads him to drugs and, that sex lifestyle, all of this party lifestyle that Siddhartha kind of went down as well. So I feel like they're really, really comparable. And a very important thing that I want to, Kamaswami dropped this in the book, like a precious quote in page 64 that I saw, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And immediately I thought of Elvis Presley. As he says in page 64, Kamaswami, drops this. He spits. But how will you live if you are without possession? I was reading that. I dropped the book.
God.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
I'm saying I read that and I dropped the book. I started crying, like straight up. And my mom came up to me and was like, "Yo, Adi, what's going on?" And I was like, "I don't know, something just touched really deep." And I wanna highlight that quote because this is a perfect characterization of who Kamaswami is in comparison to Siddhartha. Siddhartha, he has lived a life completely apart from pleasures and completely focused in meditation. But Kamaswami presents this lifestyle of, you only need possessions. Possessions is all you have, just like Colin Parker does to Elvis. And I feel like these two people are clear pivotal points for both the story of Elvis Presley and Siddhartha, where, before them, they might be really innocent or they might be going down a really good path. But eventually they meet them, in this case, Kamaswami and Colin Parker, and everything, goes badly. They are presented with the life of pleasures.
Arif. Okay. Gabriel.
Oh.
Gabriel.
Okay,
What do
Gabriel.
you
Go
think
ahead,
about
Gabriel.
all of this?
That was an awesome comparison, Eddie. But I think that another interesting comparison that can be made when discussing relationships in Siddhartha and other pop culture movies in the relationship between Siddhartha and Kamala and Barry the Bee and Vanessa in the Bee movie. For example, during the Bee movie, we see how Barry breaks a cardinal rule of his species by creating a relationship with a human called Vanessa. Through this forbidden relationship, he learns how humans are stealing honey, and he decides to sue humanity for theft. This is how Barry the Bee finds his true calling and purpose in his life. In comparison to Siddhartha, obviously, through Siddhartha's relationship with Kamala, he experiences the world of desires and learns how essential this part of this journey is for him. It is due to his involvement with ambition and lust that he is able to reach perfection and find nirvana.
Completely agree, Gabo. Great comparison. So we talk about pandas, everything. Pandas, bees, origins. So great comparison. But Arif has something to say.
I'm not going to make it Elvis related, but because if I keep talking about Elvis, I might extend this. You can follow me on Instagram and, I'm going to make an entire new podcast talking about Elvis Presley. Yeah.
What did the producer say?
Oh my God, my bad. He was saying something about Elvis. Oh, wait, no, I'm out of script. I'm sorry. Okay, as I was saying, you guys can probably hear it right now. This thing of, recording in the forest and in the jungle of Puerto Rico, it's kind of complicated. So as you can hear, it is starting to rain. So we have to wrap it up real quick. You might even hear some monkeys in the background. So we gotta go soon.
Okay. Let us do a simple recap. What we talk about today in this power episode of Mountain Readers. Leilani?
Yeah, so basically, we just talked about how Siddhartha cares a lot more about power and reaching his end goal than his relationship with his father, Govinda, Kamaswami. Because Siddhartha has a relationship with anybody, he will hold the majority of the power.
We also discussed how different films can represent the same power ideologies and emphasis that we witness in Siddhartha. For example, in Angel's example of Kung Fu Panda, Arif's awesome example of Elvis, and Gawa's example of the Bee movie.
Personally, I think Kung Fu Panda was the best comparison to Siddhartha, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And my beauty is Poe and his 3 wonderful movies.
Angel, I might have to agree a little bit on you. Kung Fu Panda, peak fiction. But I also gotta say, come on, Elvis Presley, he's kind of goated, and I wanna talk about that. And I feel like another key point that I mentioned was Kamaswami's role in Siddhartha's journey and how that can relate to Elvis Presley. But I believe, Kamaswami, top 5 characters in the entire novel that made this happen.
All right, people. Production is telling me to wrap up quickly. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and see you all in the next episode.
Woo! See you guys. Follow me for Elvis Presley content.
Mountain Reader.